Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I call to order this hearing of March 20th, 2025 in the matter of case file Z0074-24 application for T-Mobile facility on Llewellyn is the name of what their T-Mobile refers to their facility as. My name is Joe Turner. I am the county's hearings officer. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing today. I start by saying I'm not a county employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the Board of Commissioners. I say that so you know you're getting an independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct public hearings and make decisions about certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I am not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with Planning Commission and Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As a hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker. I believe I am unbiased with regard to the application before me today. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. However, anyone has the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county's website. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. If anybody else wants to testify in support of the application, they may do so. And then anybody who wants to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns. That should cover everybody who wants to say something about this application. You fall into one of those categories. Once everyone's had an initial opportunity to testify, I will give staff and the applicant alone the opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include any new evidence, I will give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I will close the hearing, or close the hearing without taking any additional testimony from the public. Anyone with an interest in this application may offer relevant oral or written testimony. But testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria, which are set out in the staff report. However, it's important that all parties make their best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county, but may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. However, LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker know something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me with enough specificity that people can understand what the issue is. If the applicant wants to object to any conditions of approval on constitutional grounds, they must raise those issues before me as well. If you feel you need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open for any other purpose, or if anybody wants me to continue the hearing, you must make that request before the close of the hearing today. Also, my decision must comply with state law that requires that I issue a final written decision within 150 days after the application was filed. So there's some limit to how long I can continue the hearing or hold the record open. When you testify, please begin by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone else, please say so. Staff will go through the technical issues of how to indicate that you want to testify through the Zoom platform. They'll do that after my introduction here. I will note that concerns were raised in some of the written testimony about potential health effects of the facility. However, federal law precludes the county from considering such concerns. Federal law has preclusively determined that if the facility meets federal limits on emissions, that it will not have a health effect. So the county is prohibited from considering those impacts. But that concludes my introduction. Ms. Fields, you want to start us out?
Sure. This public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and representatives of the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature. Attendees on PC and iPad, your raise hand button will be on the Zoom bar, which will either be on the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all of the participants' cameras, not just the one who is speaking. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you provide your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, email the written testimony to jfields@clackamas.us or mail it to the Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, Oregon, 97045. The staff contact and email address is also available on the webpage where you found the Zoom link for today's meeting. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer written decision. If you do not wish to testify, but would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address. And you can do that by mailing Joy Fields at the staff contact for the application or by entering your contact in the Zoom chat function during the hearing. With that, that is the procedure for following the Zoom public hearing process.
You're going to go ahead and proceed with your staff report.
Okay. During the introduction, there may have been a notification of the file number. We are here today for Z0077-24, which is an application for a new telecommunication tower. Vertical Bridge and T-Mobile are proposing to install antennas and associated equipment on a tower that is 190 feet tall. That is the tower height. In addition, there is a lightning rod and an FAA light at the top of the tower. So in the plan submitted, with the lightning rod, it's 200 feet tall. equipment cabinets and associated equipment are also contained within a leased area that is 100 feet by 100 feet, located approximately where the star is on the map on the screen. The property is at 22630 South Upper Highland Road and includes approximately 23 acres of land zoned for ag forest. The tower access is proposed off of the lesser functional classification road down here to the southeast, Schaefer Road, and towers in the ag forest zone are a conditional use. The table in section 407 leads you to 406, which leads you to 835. So finding the criteria for the ag forest zone can be complicated. However, in the section for wireless telecommunication towers, the table of process for type 2 wireless facilities, which this would be considered a type 2 or a level 2 wireless facility, it has a footnote that says that telecommunication towers are also subject to 40605A1 in both the ag forest and the timber zoning district. 40605A1 says that the use may be allowed provided that the proposed use will not force a significant change in or significantly increase the cost of accepted farm and forest practices on agricultural and forest lands, and the proposed use will not significantly increase fire hazard or significantly increase fire suppression costs or risks to fire suppression personnel. I bring that up because the applicant did not provide evidence of the any change or lack of change to the cost or practices of farm and forest in the area, and did not address how the tower itself would impact or not impact fire hazards. They addressed how the increased cell coverage would facilitate fire suppression practices, but not how the proposed use would impact fire hazards. The property has to be suitable for the proposed use to follow the conditional use criteria in 120303. And both staff and the applicant found that the site is open, flat. There's no known environmental overlays in the vicinity of the proposed tower. The tower is proposing to have a few trips for maintenance staff, and it consists of a compound that is 100 feet by 100 feet wide. It goes to be 120 feet when the parking area and fire turnaround is included in the compound leased area. So the equipment and tower is contained within 100 by 100, but when you add the parking and fire turnaround, it extends it to be 100 by 120 feet. The applicant provided photo simulations of the tower showing that they propose to use the stock antenna towers and a steel monopole. There is no indication that it would be a weathered steel look. It appears to be silver in these photo simulations. And so staff was unable to determine if it would be coated or painted in a way to blend in with the surrounding areas. The silver color appears to blend in during the snowy time, but in times where there is no snow, the silver color, steel color is pretty visible. The public testimony in opposition, as the hearings officer mentioned, included health concerns, but it also includes reduced property value, the visual impacts and aesthetics of the tower, the fact that the property is zoned for farm and forest use, and this is not a farm and forest use, that the current cell coverage is fine, and that there is an existing tower available for co-location, or an existing tower in the vicinity that would allow for T-Mobile to be located on that existing tower. The goals and policies of the comprehensive plan have to be met to comply with the conditional use criteria in 1203. The chapters that staff find applicable to telecommunication towers include Chapter 3, Chapter 4, and Chapter 7. The applicant noted that they comply with the comprehensive plan by meeting the requirements of the zoning code. However, staff found many sections of the zoning code that were not met, including 406, 835, and 1307. And so there is no indication that the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan are met with this proposal. As mentioned, the public opposition identified that there is an existing tower in the vicinity. Section 835 says that no new tower will be permitted unless no existing support tower can accommodate the proposed antenna. The existing AT&T tower was approved in 2008 and has room for co-locations. The property where the existing tower is located is approximately 1,500 feet from the property where the new tower is proposed. However, when you measure from the existing tower to the proposed tower location, the separation distance required in Section 835 from structure to structure is met, because the distance is 2980, or approximately. However, the applicant did not provide any structural analysis or information regarding the existing tower and why it was not sufficient to meet their needs. In the original application, they did not include the existing tower in their application materials. They showed the proposed site and using the bandwidth that they chose, the existing tower does not show up. But with the proposed tower, they show increased coverage. Then they asked staff about the existing AT&T tower and modified their coverage data to show the improved coverage with the new tower, and the existing tower is shown on this map, and the reduced coverage if they were required to co-locate on the existing AT&T tower. This map shows the N600 coverage. I note that because the previous map shows the 700 coverage, and not being an electrician or a cell tower consultant, I don't know what those different requirements are, but I interpreted that as to why the existing tower did not show up, that they were using a different bandwidth to generate these initial maps. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Here is a 2024 aerial image of the existing tower. It shows the antenna on top with the additional space down the pole that was identified in the application as being available for additional carriers for co-location. In Section 835 and 1009, there are requirements for vegetation and landscaping around uses that include equipment screening and buffering, requirements from 1009, and requirements in 835 that the vegetation to be added, removed, or changed is identified on the site plan, and that the vegetation landscaping screening reflects the vegetation in the area. The applicant failed to address landscaping and provided no information on the materials that would be retained, added, replaced, or used to screen the compound. The original application provided one type of parking and turnaround. It was modified in the second submission by the applicant to be a hammerhead to allow for the fire access turnaround to also provide the parking space that is required by 1015. 1005 deals with lighting. Lighting was not proposed in the application. The narrative includes that if lighting is required by FCC, they would add it. But the
FCC or FAA, which one?
The narrative says FCC.
Okay.
The site plan shows that there is FAA lighting on the tower plan that was provided. These are not typically the lights that we look at in 1005 for shielding and being oriented downwards to reduce light from going onto adjacent properties. However, there is confusion of, is lighting automatically going to be included or is it not? 1006 deals with erosion control for this use because water and sewer is not proposed. And comments from the Transportation and Engineering Division address erosion control because they are the management authority for that in this rural area. 1007 addresses roads, and those comments are also from the Transportation and Engineering Division that found that the use meets the transportation-related road requirements at the proposed location. No trash and recycling is anticipated by either the applicant or staff. I do want to note that 1307 requires that applications be initiated by the property owners and that the application is signed by the property owners. And the application was initiated by Brian Cook and signed by Connie Diane Sharp. However, review of the deeds for the property found that the property is owned by Connie Ferens and Roland Ferens. I asked for clarification on the ownership to determine if there was a divorce or a death that resulted in a new owner of the property, and there was no evidence provided. And so staff is unable to determine whether the application was initiated or submitted by the property owner. With all of that, staff recommends denial for this telecommunication tower.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. I just had one clarification on page 11 of your staff report. You refer to towards the bottom, refers to exhibit 2G. I think that's supposed to be 2H regarding the coverage map, because on mine 2G is
Page 11.
2G is the time extension. 2H is a response to need for additional materials is what it's titled. But bottom of the page, like 5 lines up, talks
The
about
coverage. Yes.
yeah, the updated coverage map listed as exhibit 2G. I think that's supposed to be 2H.
Okay. I will look at those exhibits and make sure that I have an answer for you on that.
Not a critical issue, just want to make sure we got the right citation. And where are we with 150 days on this one?
The applicant was unclear when they requested the time extension. And I say that because the applicant requested a 30-day extension pause to the planning clock on the first request, but they asked the planning clock to be paused until November 24th, and the request came in on September 18th. And so that is 67 days of pausing the clock. And so staff assumed that they, in fact, wanted the clock to be paused until November 24th and sent an email to that effect to the applicant. And there was no response regarding an incorrect date for pausing the clock. I say that because using the date that the applicant requested planning review to continue, they paused the clock for a total of 117 days through the 117 days through the two requests. Staff anticipate that the 150 days ends on the 14th of May because of that pause in the planning review clock.
And
Is
that's
that clear?
based on the 67 or 100 and whatever days you said.
Yes,
Okay.
that's based on 117 days being requested for gathering additional information.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll ask the applicant to clarify that that they agree with the expiration of the 150 days on May 14th, just so we're all on the same page. Thank you, Ms. Fields. I don't have any other questions. The applicant's opportunity to testify.
Hi, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
No problem. And we're getting some background sound. If anybody who's not currently testifying can please mute themselves.
Okay. Are you able to see just my presentation right now?
We're seeing your presentation on your next slide, but yeah.
Let's see if I can fix that.
There we go. It works. We're seeing what you're intending to present.
Let's just switch the screen I'm sharing. Okay, is that better?
There we go. Yep.
Okay. So my name is Marina Monahan. Last name is Monihan. I am with Tower Engineering Professionals. And I am representing Vertical Bridge as the applicant and the proposed tower owner, and then T-Mobile as their proposed first tenant. There is some overlap with Joy's presentation here, but just to reiterate, this is for 22630 South Upper Highland Road in Beaver Creek. And Vertical Bridge is proposing to install and operate an unmanned wireless communications facility. The proposed facility will consist of a 195-foot steel monopole within a 50 by 50-foot fence compound for their ground equipment. And then that monopole will be able to accommodate 3 additional carriers in addition to T-Mobile. And this is the project location that Joy pointed out. And this was also some overlap from Joy's presentation showing the proposal being in the southeast corner of the property. This has the revised turnaround for fire access. And it has the access from Shockley Road here, which is less frequented compared to the South Upper Highland Road. This is also from Joy's presentation, the proposed tower with a 5-foot lightning rod on top. It does have the FAA lighting as proposed. I do think this can be changed to FAA lighting if required. I don't think it has been confirmed if it's required or not at this point. I can confirm that though, if the record's left open. This is the photo sims that Joy also showed. The steel monopole will have a non-reflective finish on it to prevent glare and possible disturbance to other properties. The site obscuring fence will have slats on it, wood slats, to make that site obscuring. A monopole will offer the smallest footprint and would allow for the continued use of the property. It's primarily farm animal grazing at this time, seasonally. And so the smallest footprint will offer the maximum use of that use. As proposed, the monopole will not produce noise, vibrations, odors, emissions that would interfere with farming operations or forestry management of the area and the neighboring properties. A noise study was provided with the application. The improvement of wireless connectivity in the area can benefit business and farming operations in the area. And then the proposed tower will not increase fire hazard or suppression costs. It will be non-combustible, primarily made of steel and fire-resistant materials, and the site will be maintained per local fire codes. The proposed monopole is within a hayfield, primarily being used for farm animal grazing. Joy is correct. At the time of application, a landscape plan was not included with the application as there were concerns for water conservation in the area. If staff does deem that additional screening with vegetation is required and necessary, I would hope that you'd consider adding a condition. I think Vertical Bridge would be happy to accommodate, especially between their two adjacent roadways. So screening those two roadways from the compound, I think that would be appropriate. And just keeping in mind that all proposed plants must be non-toxic to the livestock and compatible with grazing to continue with the current use of the property. Next, I have an updated coverage objective and engineering justification that was provided from T-Mobile. And the goal of this property or this tower is to improve coverage along South Upper Highland Road, which sees about 700 vehicles a day, connecting to Highway 211. We have another 2,200 vehicles a day there. Metzler Park, the North Highland neighborhood, and the Upper Highland neighborhood. They chose this area because of customer complaints, service requests, and then just their coverage map showing that there was a kind of a gap in coverage in this area. This map is the existing service without the proposed site. The blue site is our proposed Vertical Bridge site. The red is AT&T, which is our alternate site that Joy pointed out. The black dots are future T-Mobile sites, and then the pink sites are already on air. And here we have, so green is showing the reliable coverage in the area. And this is now with the proposed sites or the future T-Mobile sites, but not with our proposed Vertical Bridge site. So green is reliable coverage and yellow is marginal coverage. And here we are with our proposed vertical bridge site, really filling in this gap here. And this is at the 190-foot rad that is being proposed. Here we
What does
have,
RAD stand for?
so
Just
that's
the-
just our center line of our antennas.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I wanted
Yeah.
to check.
And this is the direct comparison between AT&T and vertical bridge. And our vertical bridge site, we have over a mile of additional reliable coverage. And I think that serves over 1,000 people, like an extra 1,000 people in the population of the area. The vertical bridge, I think, is 3,200, and the AT&T population would cover around 1,900 people. So it is a decent sized increase in coverage for the area.
And when you refer to the AT&T site, you mean if T-Mobile co-located their antennas?
If they were to
on it?
co-locate on the T-Mobile site, correct. And that is also assuming that there could be a tower extension for T-Mobile to co-locate at 135 feet. Right now, it's currently a 120-foot tower.
So, just to make sure I understand, currently AT&T's towers is 120 feet, and you would have to extend it to 135 to get the coverage you've
It
just
would be a
shown.
20-foot extension to 140 with T-Mobile at 135. And that is, I'll go back to this map. This coverage map is assuming that we would be able to get that 135 feet.
Okay.
So the alternative site that was looked at was the AT&T site that we've mentioned. We can actually skip over this. Here is our search string that we were looking at based off of what T-Mobile saw, the service requests, drop calls, gap in coverage. Red is the AT&T, blue is our subject site. And the reason for rejection was insufficient coverage, which I go into detail on this next slide. So the current tower under 20 feet does not meet the coverage objectives due to the low rad center and the surrounding trees. So a tower extension would be required, which would also result in structural modifications that need to be made. So they would recommend at least a 20-foot tower extension. And then additionally, trees would need to be evaluated for trimming or topping off to ensure that there's a clear path for the microwave antenna and the need for backhaul, the fiber. So this is a map of the existing service and then adding in the AT&T site at 135 feet, which we saw this map earlier. This is just a bigger version of it. On the map, green is our reliable coverage, so that allows for 5G. They're looking at in-building compared to yellow, which is looking at an appropriate outdoor coverage. But green is looking at in-home, in buildings, and that's also the signal strength that's required for it to allow for home internet as well with T-Mobile. So that is just the difference between our green and our yellow coverage. Looking at the search ring, when T-Mobile was putting this together, they're looking for to increase coverage, looking at areas with traffic. They are looking at what they refer to as the clutter, which is their antennas aren't going to be able to penetrate mountains, hills, rocks. So we're looking for a flat area without those surrounding barriers. And then call handoff, they're trying to decrease the number of gaps between those green reliable zones. So when you're traveling, when you're in the car driving, that you can have seamless phone calls. Quality of service, we want the reliable service that's working indoor and outdoor. The 600 radio frequency megahertz, that is a frequency that allows for indoor and outdoor coverage. And then they're looking at land use, and this was an area that allows for new towers with a conditional use. That is it. All right,
Okay.
please let me know if there's anything else I can address.
Your initial coverage map submitted with the original application referred to 700 something. I assume it was megahertz, given what your other maps show. Is that correct? And what's the difference between the original maps were 700 and then these were 600?
I would have to look into that. If you could keep the record open, I could properly respond to that.
Okay. Ms. Fields noted that, and I just wanted to see if we can answer that question. The farm impacts, state law requires that applicants define a search area around your site and justify that area, and then look at all the farm operations and forest operations that are occurring in that ring, and then document how this will not impact those farm operations or increase the cost of those. You've made some arguments that it's going to improve communication for farmers, et cetera, but that's not what it requires. It requires that you show that it's not going to impact those. Just off the top of my head, one thing that could be impacted is, if somebody's doing aerial spraying, it doesn't appear to be likely in this area, given the trees and topography, but I don't know. But that's what state law requires. So that's something the applicants needs to provide. Noise was another issue that was cited in the staff report. You did submit a noise study, but it didn't address state law. I think that was the issue that staff raised on DEQ standards. Given the numbers, it appears that it could be met, but that's the applicant's burden to show. Let me flip through the staff report real quick, see if there were other issues that staff recommended denial on that we haven't hit. Timber operation. The comprehensive plan provisions, staff did address that. I'm not going to go through that in what the staff report says, but that's something you may want to address further in the during the open record period. Landscaping, if you want to provide a plan, I think it could be conditioned. I'll ask staff if they have any concerns with a condition versus the applicant proposing a plan. Same with tower coating and color. Equipment shelters, staff argues that what you're proposing cabinets, which are equipment shelters, and there's no, what does the code require? That they have to be enclosed, and they're not. So that's something else that needs to be addressed. And then it also notes that the the surface water management form you submitted wasn't signed or reviewed by development engineering. So they can't find that surface water issues are addressed or can be met. And I think that was it. So those are issues that you haven't addressed fully that need to be more fully addressed during the open record. If you want to address those to some extent now, feel free, but otherwise we can just hold the record open. It's up to you.
Yeah, I would like to address those during an open record period, please.
How long do you think you would need to hold the record open to do that?
So I do agree with that May 14th date.
Right.
The 150 days. Would we be able to hold the record open for 4 weeks?
I have no problem with that, provided you expressly agree to further extend the 150 days to accommodate that.
Yes.
Great. And I would actually hold it open for the public for a period as well, and the staff, so they can review and respond, and then another period for the applicant's final argument. So when we get to the end, we'll decide on exactly. I'll give you the applicant 4 weeks. I'll take testimony from staff and the public, how long they want to respond, and then we'll go from there. So I will ask for it. It's going to be more than 4 weeks of an extension of the 150-day clock to accommodate the full open record, but we can talk about that at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to testify in support of this application? Please raise your hand by clicking on the raise your hand button as staff indicated. And I'm not seeing anybody. I didn't expect it, but I have to ask. Who would like to go first to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns? Please click on the raise your hand button to indicate. Okay, Steve Ellis. And staff will need to promote you, or there we go. It looks like you're unmuted now, Mr. Ellis. But we're not hearing Mr. Ellis yet. Ms. Rennert, is there anything he needs to do, or is he unmuted on your end? Okay.
It
Mr.
shows that
Rennert?
he's unmuted.
Yeah. Mr. Ellis, can you mute yourself and unmute again? See if that works. We are not hearing you.
If Mr. Ellis would like to leave the Zoom meeting and rejoin, sometimes that
Yeah,
would fix the
okay.
audio. And in the meantime, I have Donna.
That was my plan as well. Mr. Ellis, we're not hearing you. We think if you leave the meeting and rejoin, that may make it work. So if you'll do that, and in the meantime, we'll take testimony from Donna, who was the next raised hand. And Donna, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now we can.
Lovely. My name is Donna Russell, Russell. My address is 22515 South Llewellyn Road. Our property is directly adjacent to the 22630 South Upper Highland Road property. Our property will be right next to the proposed cell tower by Vertical Bridge. I have already sent in a written testimony in opposition, but I will go over real quickly what I would like to address. This is the biggest one for us. That cell tower is directly, it would be considered, I would like to use this as in our country front yard. We will see it in every way that we look out our windows. Our property is all the way down to that property. And every time we look out a window, we will see it. We will see it during the day. We will see it at night with the red light flashing. There is no way that we can get out of it In addition to that, we have a gorgeous view of Mount Hood, that cell tower, especially if you add the AT&T onto it, that becomes 140 feet, will be smack dab in the middle of our view. Now, that can be one of those things where you look at and go, that's not a big deal. But if we were ever to resell, that is a huge deal as far as resale value goes. We have a gorgeous view of Mount Hood, but smack dab in the middle of it, and I mean almost exactly in the middle of it, is a cell tower. That's just not acceptable for us. That's a huge loss in income for us. I'm going to move on from that, and I'm going to talk about the access road onto Shockley Road. And it is Shockley. I believe you use Sheffield, Ms. Fields, but it's Shockley that it goes out. Yeah, no problem. It's Shockley that it goes off of. That's a very dangerous place to put an access road. If you come around that corner, it is at a top of just a small rise, and then it's almost a blind corner coming on to Shockley, then to Llewellyn. And that would highly dangerous. If it's just almost non-acceptable. I'm really, really worried that if trucks were going in and out of there, one, they can't see to take a left-hand turn onto to get out onto Shockley, to get onto Upper Highland. And I'm going to say, for somebody who has lived here since 1986, that's a race car corner. People do not slow down there, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. They do not slow down there. So I would really like to address that. That is something new that came up in this conversation. We've talked about the lower property values. We've talked about the personal visible range for us. Zoned agricultural and forestry. We talked about that. Although I'm shocked that we're putting a cell tower in the middle of a field that currently has horses in it, and we have had cattle in the past and horses in the past. What does it mean that if I don't like it? I guess, as I say, I'm not saying that very eloquently, but it is not something that is very good. The health concerns, I know that we can't address that. I'm going to leave that to Steve Ellis, because I know that he would like to do that. There are other places that this cell phone tower could go if it is needed. What I am very concerned about with Vertical Bridge is that there are cell phone towers already out there that could be used. I believe he said it was an AT&T cell phone tower that T-Mobile could go onto. I don't know why we are spattering our area out there, especially when it is such a large, be a potential financial downfall for us when there is something that can be used that is already there. Why are we putting, I'm going to call it urban pollution out there when we don't need it out there?
Mhm.
I'm going to let Steve Ellis finish the rest of it, but yeah, as a neighbor that is very right next to it and will be affected significantly, we oppose this in a great way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. I
Yeah.
will note that the 20-foot or the extension that you referred to, that's if they located this facility on the existing AT&T tower.
Thank you.
AT&T's not proposing to locate on this one, and what they've proposed is what they're proposing. It's not, there's no extension, no higher tower required on this or proposed on this one. But anyway, I understand your testimony. Thank you, Ms. Russell. Mr. Ellis is back. Can we try and unmute him? Is talking permitted? We're not hearing you, Mr. Ellis. Can he call in? Is that an
Let me-
option?
let me-
Wait, I'm hearing, yes, I think we're hearing Steve's iPad. Is that Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, I switched from my laptop to my iPad and
Whatever you did worked. Thank you, sir.
okay. Is it my turn, Mr.
Yes.
Turner? Okay. Well, first of all, Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for hosting this hearing today. Appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to do.
Can I get your name and address, Mr. Ellis?
Steve Ellis, Steve and Linda, my wife, Linda, she had knee replacement surgery yesterday, so she's sort of laid up in the other room. But
Yeah.
We live at 22598 South Llewellyn Road, and we lived here be 11 years in May. Anyway, so that's who we are, and this business, I sent in some written comments too, by the way. I assume you got those. So
I did.
I'm not going to read through all my written comments. I think I'll highlight a few things in the essence of time, and I had a few questions that I might ask. First of all, our position, mine and Linda's in there with her knee iced and up, is we think this zoning change should be denied and approval not given for the construction operation of this tower. The county rules say that permits may be permitted. It doesn't say they shall, it says may. So that suggests to us you've got an option here. We do not feel this is the most appropriate land use for the site, as the applicant claims. I read the application. It says this is the most appropriate land use for the site, unquote. And as one of the goals, and the most appropriate land use for the site is agriculture and forestry. And that's why we moved out here, to live in agriculture and forestry. And by the way, our cell coverage for that 11 years has been terrific. Yeah, we get all the bars. So, I mean, we don't have any complaints out here. There's numerous cell towers in the immediate area. You mentioned this one up on Upper and Lower Highland that I didn't know till now it was AT&T's tower. There's one up on the Butte back up that way. There's also one on the other side of that same field. I can see it sticking up above the trees. I don't know who owns that one. So, there's towers out here. What I did not know until 30 minutes ago is that this AT&T tower over here at the corner of Lower and Upper Highland, that they could sublease that out, and that would be an option. Why T-Mobile doesn't take that option, right? So it's all right there. It might be a good question for them. I mean, I could speculate, it's their business plan. If we rent theirs, or we could put our own over here and rent that out. So these towers, my experience has been these towers, once they're established, right, once they get a permit, that becomes the future communication site. So they can sublease that tower to other companies to have other devices on there. And so it likely was a business decision on that, but that is an option. There's also some BLM land down the road. You can apply down to BLM land down up south, down Upper Highland Road, maybe put it down there as an option, or up here on this butte. But anyway, there are some options to put in it right across the road from our property where we have to look at it. Now, I'm going to touch on the human health hazard, and I didn't know till Mr. Turner explained that federal law prohibits Clackamas County from considering the impacts. That's new information to me. And in fact, offline, if your staff could email me that law, I would love to read that law and see exactly what it says. But that's a big deal. And in T-Mobile, it's my understanding they require the landowner to sign a form that says, you will not sue us if you get cancer or this kind of stuff. Now, if there was no human health hazard from these, why would they even ask the landowner to sign such a release? I mean, that you can all connect those dots. So it says in their application, I'm reading from their application, the cell tower will not, quote, will not be detrimental to public health, safety or welfare, unquote. This is simply not correct. There seems to be no lack of studies, I Googled them, regarding adverse health effects from living.
I understand, Mr. Ellis, but federal law says the county cannot consider it, provided the applicant's required to comply with federal emissions limits. And if it does, the federal government has determined conclusively that that is not going to result in adverse health effects. And so the federal law prohibits the county from considering that. So I understand the concern, but it's not something I can consider.
Well, it's in the record that I submitted, and I would like to review that federal law, because cumulatively, you know, these things are popping up like dandelions over here. So it's not one, it's the cumulative effect of all this radiation, right? Of all this, that's not like your cell phone, right? Putting up your ear. I mean, these things are radiating 24/7. And so the emissions are continuous, is what I'm saying. But anyway, it's in my record, and I'd like to leave it in the record. And,
yeah, it is in the record.
Okay. Anyway, it's dangerous to health, anyone, including us. Property values. I think Donna touched on the property values. I mean, it's going to affect her view of Mount Hood, and you know, this thing's sticking up there. I mean, you know, I mean, you guys, it's not your backyard. You don't have to look at it, but she does, and we do. And so the study published by the National Association of Realtors found that 94% of home buyers say they're less interested and would pay less for a property near cell towers. So the landowner is going to get the rent. You know, we're adversely impacted, right? Our property values are going to be adversely impacted. The aesthetics, you know, it's an unnecessary obstruction to our view shed and the view shed of others who live out here. And it is an agriculture and forestry, which is why we moved out here, right? For agriculture and forestry. And so that's what it's zoned for. We think it should stay that way. It's a rural setting. We love our rural setting. Donna's right about, you know, we get people screaming down the road out here. In fact, the county fixed some of the potholes, and I told them you didn't have to do that because it slowed these kids down from rolling up and down the road in their cars. But they did it anyway, and I appreciate that. There's the other thing I'm going to touch on, I think I did in my comments, is when exclusions are made for the zone, whether it be the cell tower or other things, it sort of eats away at the zoning out here for forestry and agriculture. I mentioned what's sort of a truck corral is developed down Upper Highland Road now, and a couple of years ago they even have a scale in there now for weighing these semis, and we never got a notice of that. I would have spoken out on that, but once you start chipping away on those things, that'd be a cell tower, commercial use, then before you know it, where's the agriculture and forestry?
I understand that concern, Mr. Ellis, but that's a policy decision by the Board of Commissioners. The zoning, the Ag Forest zoning does allow cell towers as a conditional use. So if it meets the conditional use criteria, the county does have to approve it. It does say may, but the county is required, that may means if it meets those standards, it's allowed, period.
Yeah.
The issue is that it meets the standards. So that's that's the primary concern.
Well, anyway, the other question I have, it was mentioned about an environmental overlay, and I don't know who mentioned that. I wasn't sure what that is, and you could explain.
It means if there's wetlands, streams, steep slopes, the county looks globally, their zoning maps look globally at those type of issues, and if they're there, they note them on the map. And if, you know, streams, there has to be a setback from the stream. Same with steep slopes. If the steep slopes exist, they have to be identified. If they're over a certain grade, you can't build on them. If they're lesser grade, you have geotechnical reports, etc. So that's what they're talking about. There's no mapped concerns in this area: wetlands, streams, steep slopes, etc.
Well, in the essence of time, again, you've got my notes that I've sent in for the record. I will just, I guess, close out here and saying, no, we don't want this thing out there. We don't want to look at it. And there are options. And it sounds like this AT&T tower, even if it's, 20 feet or whatever higher over here in the trees, it sounds like that is an option. And that's the way they should go. And this if this is approved, this conditional use is approved, which I hope it's not, which we're against. I think I heard that tower can accommodate 3 additional carriers with conditional use permit. Well, okay, so once, that'll be a rubber stamp, people. Let's admit it. If once you get one conditional use permit there and they say we want to sublease and make more money, right, from other companies putting more stuff on that tower for all of us to look at, it's not going to be denied. We know that because the footprint's already there. So that's what I would call reasonable foreseeable. So they they should disclose reasonable foreseeable future actions, and that would be one of them. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment, Mr. Turner. And then one other thing, for the record, I want to thank the planning and zoning staff. Whenever I call them or email them, not this issue, but other issues, boy, they are responsive. They're good. They're polite. I always give them a big smiley green thing. So I wanted to say that for the record too. They're good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sure, staff appreciates that. I had to finish my note there. I will note that the code requires that cell towers provide opportunities for co-location by additional antennae in order to avoid the need for additional towers. More antenna on a tower has less impact than another tower with antenna on it. So that's why the code requires the applicant to document that they can't co-locate on existing towers or other buildings. And that's what the applicant's going to have to show. And the staff at this point feels that they didn't. And so that's why one of the reasons I'm holding the record open. But I will give the public an opportunity to review whatever the applicant submits as well during that open record period. And we'll discuss that at the end of the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
And thank you again for allowing us this opportunity to comment today.
You're welcome, sir. Jacob Gibson is next. And Mr. Ellis, if you could mute yourself again. And Mr. Gibson, you'll need to unmute yourself. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Jacob Gibson. I live at 1276 Comstock Way in Woodburn, Oregon. My last name is Gibson. I am calling on behalf of the Russell family. And I am calling I'm trying to bring a unique perspective. I worked and built cell towers for many years of my young life. And I also was unaware that there was an alternative tower so close. I want to keep this brief and try and hit a couple points that when I heard this was happening, that concerns me and the value of my in-laws' property. One of the reasons, even Mr. Ailes said this, is everybody lives out there is because they were trying to get away from city life and the clutter of all of that. And bringing this cell tower into that will definitely decrease the property value of these homes, because when people are looking to move out into a rural area, they're not looking to move out into right next to a steel structure or antennas or anything of that nature. Another topic that I wanted to touch on was they talked about fire restrictions and can it cause potential fires. This is in the middle of a hayfield, and we're going to bring over 400 amps into the middle of a hayfield, and there are accidents do happen. I've been on towers where I've gone up and things were installed improperly and they melted down on the top and they rained down molten copper. And if that lands in a hayfield or a wind catches it out in a rural area, the damages can be extensive. Another thing that I would like to talk about is in the proposal, they talked about minimal traffic. I understand that
Mr. Gibson, I'm sorry, I missed that. What, the traffic?
Minimal traffic.
Minimal, thank you. Thanks, sir.
But it also has the option of a sublease. So as soon as, you have T-Mobile on the top of this tower and say Verizon picks it up, well, that's more contractors, they can't open-endedly say there's going to be low traffic while saying there could be a possibility of up to 4 more carriers onto this tower. They all are subcontracted to different contractors, so it's not one crew that will be going out to service all of these towers all of these antennas. It will be multiple different crews, and they can't say that there will be minimal traffic whilst keeping open the option to sublease that tower. If it was one carrier, I could agree that there would be minimal traffic, and that is the proposal for now. But there's also open-ended that there could be more, and that just means more crews, more trash, more all that comes, more traffic on that road that Donna was speaking about. Another topic that I would like to hit is out in this rural area, and they talked about if T-Mobile were to locate onto the AT&T site with a 20-foot extension, which I have done many of times in my cell career. That happens all the time that these guys jump onto each other's towers. We're talking about a mile of coverage difference. In that rural span, how many households are in 1 mile? I understand in a city setting, 1 mile is astronomical, the coverage that you can gain in 1 mile. When you look at the maps that were provided, the gaps between the towers that are out there existingly are astronomical. And then you have these 2 dots landing right next to each other. It just seems silly to put a brand new tower where there is one within 2,000 feet. Those antennas, as we can see by the maps that have been working fine, with much farther gaps between them. And so to put one right next to each other within 2,000 feet seems, when it's not wanted by any of the neighbors, seems just a little bit ridiculous to me. In the effort to keep this brief, I won't keep reiterating some of the other points. I just wanted to thank you guys for the time that you guys put this together. It feels good to be able to speak on these issues and get some of these concerns out of the way. And again, thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. If you could click on the raise your hand button so we know you've testified, and also mute yourself again. Is there anybody else who'd like to say anything about the application who's not had the opportunity to do so? Not seeing anybody. So Ms. Fields, you want a response from the county?
I do not have anything else to add.
Okay.
I did confirm that you're correct about the typo being exhibit 2H instead of 2G.
Thanks. I'm just looking at my notes. The neighbors, excuse me, raised concerns about site distance at the site access onto Shockley Road. I don't recall that being addressed in the staff report. Okay. Is that something I assume if this were approved, that the county would require a condition of approval that they demonstrate that adequate site distance is available?
Yes, and with the concern over safety, I have heard in other cases where the Transportation and Engineering Division require a speed study to ensure that their clear vision requirements are met for the proposed driveway. And so with the speed turning around that corner, a speed study may be necessary to ensure that the site distance is actually met for the driveway.
Okay. How long would the county like to review and respond to whatever the applicant submits?
I think a week or 2 would be plenty. So
Okay.
let's say 2 weeks to respond to the material that the applicant provides during the first open record period. Okay.
And assuming, well, not assuming, sorry, if the staff finds that the application could comply with the approval criteria, I assume you would propose conditions of approval as well.
Correct. I did not include those in the staff report because
Right.
so many of the criteria were not met.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were things that felt that were above conditions of approval in what was submitted. So
Okay.
I did not include conditions of approval.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Monahan?
Thank you. Thank you for all the comments. I will like to address those during the open record period. Joy, I would like to mention that vertical bridge is open because the aesthetics of the tower were brought up a lot. If there's a different recommendation for painting the tower, or we could propose a monopine. I don't know if you would prefer to include those as conditions or if that is something that we should addressed during the open record period.
Feel free to address those during the open record period.
Okay. Can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me grab my calendar. I'm going to hold the record open, as I said. I'm going to give the applicant 4 weeks. Where are we? The 20th. So 1 week, 2 weeks. It's till April 17th. I'm talking right at the same time here. For the applicant or anybody else who wants to submit new testimony and evidence regarding this application. I'll hold it open for an additional 2 weeks till May 1st for anybody to respond to whatever was submitted during the first open record. That second period is going to be limited to responses to the new information. No new issues can be raised by the first. So if anybody wants to raise a new issue who's not the applicant, you need to submit that during the first open record period by the April 17th. And then until May 8th, for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose at the end of the second open record period, or you can submit it early as soon as I receive either your final argument or a request to close the record. I'll do so, and then I'll issue my decision within about 2 weeks after that. So I will try and get my decision out by May 22nd. And I will send my decision to the county. The county will send it to parties of record. So anybody who has testified orally or in writing, or who does so during the open record period, will be sure and receive a copy of my decision. As Ms. Fields noted, if you decide not to testify but want a copy, you can contact her and she'll put you on the mailing list. Ms. Monahan, I need you to, as you said, you agreed to hold a 150-day clock for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5, maybe 7 weeks. Do you agree to do that?
Yes, I do.
And would you
Thank
submit something in writing by 5 p.m. today to the county saying, well, we will extend the 150-day clock by 7 weeks in order to accommodate the open record period?
Yes,
Wonderful.
I can do that. Thank you.
Okay. As Ms. Fields noted, anything anybody wants to submit has to be submitted, should be submitted to Ms. Fields at her email address or delivered to the county or mailed. Anything has to be received by the county by 4 o'clock. Okay, at 4 p.m. on the relevant day, the 17th of April for the initial submittal, the 11th of May for any responses, the 1st of May, sorry, 1st of May for responses during the second period, and then the 8th of May for applicant's final response. It has to be physically received by the county by 4 o'clock on those dates. But that concludes our hearing. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.